Good evening. Tonalty, I see you here, mocking me, but must I remind you that a wizard is never late, nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to. And that is when I've arrived. So, good evening. How are you doing tonight? Awesome. Hopefully this time works a little bit better for you. So, tonight we're going to take another look at our Trebuchet. I think this is going to be the last stream. This is going to be the last stream where we touch on the Trebuchet at all. It's in a pretty good spot. I took a little bit of time between last stream and this one to kind of get things buttoned up, you could say. So we'll fire projectile at some stuff. I think we need to resize the projectile, and then we need to potentially do a quality pass on the trebuchet textures to make sure that they look good and they properly represent what they're supposed to be, and that they're not set up to be metalness or something else like that. For those of you who don't know what Last Kingdom is, Last Kingdom is a strategy game set in the medieval era. There is a link in chat for lastkingdomgame.com. There's also a link to Discord if you guys want to know more about it, or just chat with the team or the community. We have some pretty interesting conversations in our Discord. Feel free to join. I'd like to take just a couple seconds before we jump in to thank our two Patreon supporters, Anara and Moose King. You guys are heroes. Thank you. So with that being said, let's hop into CryEngine. Alright, so I'm going to load our Sandbox level. With all those wonderful warnings. And let's just pull up the trebuchet, because that's what we were working on last time. So just to quickly recap exactly what we did between last stream and tonight. I finished building out the trebuchet as an actual unit, so as an actual entity component. It's registered now. It has, and we can take a look at this. It has a mannequin entry. So let's just load the preview. There's our trebuchet. There's its attack tag and its default tag, which is just nothing. Interesting thing I found is if you don't have a default tag, animations won't work. So if anyone from Crytek's listening, that's a bug, I think. But could not be. Could be working as intended. It's one of those. It's one of those things. Yes, Donalty, it is very interesting. It's one of those things where you can kind of sell it as being a feature, but maybe not. Maybe not really. Yeah. So here's that firing animation. I also did a couple other things to the trebuchet. So I fixed the scaling a bit. It was just a little bit too large. I also changed the playback speed of the animation to be a little bit slower, as you can see in this very small window. It's not quite firing as fast as it usually does, but that's intended. And then I did some work on the character definition file itself, just to make sure that the attachments were set up properly. So there's the mannequin entry. Let's pull in a new entity. Let's add a component to it, and that's going to be the Trebuchet. And there it is. There's the Trebuchet. So what we can do now is, now that this Trebuchet exists on our level, in theory, I haven't tested this yet. We should be able to jump into game, play, and start firing at stuff. So let's give that a shot. There's our Trebuchet. It's selectable, so I'm going to select it. I'm going to right click on the deer. And okay, so it's firing. It's following the target. That's a game mechanic we're gonna have to iron out probably a little bit later. But nothing's firing from the Trebuchet itself, and I think that's because there were a couple of internal revisions to how projectile firing works. So let's go ahead and jump into code. And I'll just close down the engine there. The deer shall not. And I set this up. Let me just get to the right place. So we have our engines. We have our teaser. If you can read these file names, these are the initial planned engines we're going to have in the game. So the Trebuchet has a pretty large combat radius. The Boulder projectile has a damage of 100. And the health of everything by default is 100. So in theory, it should be a one-hit KO. So it should hit the deer and then it should just die. So let's go back to the Boulder. Let's go back to the Boulder and we'll go to the combat component and just kind of recap the firing mechanism. So the Boulder has a base property slot of trbone09. And if I go to my combat component, to the fire logic, if I load it, I have an interface. Okay, interface by name, projectile. So that's been changed. Before we were loading an attachment based on the bone that it was attached to, and I didn't really think that made a ton of sense, because I don't foresee a scenario in Last Kingdom where we're going to want to attach many different projectiles to one weapon. That might change, but there's no plan for it currently. So it's hard-coded to get the projectile attachment and fire from there. So that's going to be our first problem. So a multi-cannon, I could see that maybe. But then again, I wasn't even planning on having cannons in the game. So yeah. What I'm going to do right now, though, to get this firing, is I'm going to go into the character definition file for our Trebuchet, and I'm going to add a projectile attachment. Or rather, I'm going to fix the existing one for that Trebuchet. Alright, so then we'll go to the character, or in the character definition file. Yep, so here's the attachment. It's called Boulder. I'm just going to rename this Projectile. And this may change. Again, we'll see. Hey Moose, how's it going? Thanks for being here. Your support means a ton. I don't know if you know this, but you get a call out every time we start a stream. You're a very popular man. All right, so the joint is now a projectile. So in theory, I should be able to try to fire this thing again. Jump into game mode. Notice I haven't yet added a proper icon for the Trebuchet. And actually, I think I have one. We purchased some relatively inexpensive icons from a store. I don't know if it was the Unity store, if it was some other store. But they have a bunch of icons that we're kind of just piecing together to get stuff working initially. Yeah, so let's open this. Here's a Trebuchet icon that came with that icon set. So we'll wire that up later. Anyway, so here's a Trebuchet. And here's that deer. So let's try to fire this thing again. Oh my goodness. Okay, there it goes. What was that? Did you guys see that? That's one dead deer. I think it missed. Let's fire at the other one. The dead deer does not have health. So the deer has health. This deer has 100 health. The dead deer is not actually a dead deer. It's not actually an animal anymore. It's a resource. So actually this will be pretty fun. So if I go into my production structures and I create a hunting post, let's say. I'll throw a granary down. I can take my hunter, and he's gonna go collect that dead deer. And he's gonna take that deer back to his hunting post, and he's gonna saw it with these placeholder animations. And he's going to take this meat that he just cut up and harvested, and he's going to put it in this little building over here called a granary. And I don't know if you guys were keeping an eye on our food counters, but we just got 10 extra meat. And of course, now he's going out to collect more. So this foliage does have touch bending, yes. And in fact, touch bending and merge mesh are actually pretty easy to set up. These are from Game SDK, I believe. These ferns. But as far as the foliage goes, yes, it does have touch bending. Nope. There's currently no time of day or weather system set up. It's planned, but it's just not a super big priority right now. Getting something that resembles a game, and then we can add nice weather effects on top of it. All right, so we were doing stuff with the Trebuchet. Yeah, and feel free to add any questions you want, or ask any questions you want. So we have a problem right now, and the problem is that these boulders are massive. Like, that's, I mean, I think that's a little bit too big, if I'm being honest. My man knows how to make a pizza. Start with the dough and sauce, not the pepperoni and sausage. Okay, yes, start with the dough and sauce, but feel free to indulge in some pepperoni and sausage before it gets on the pizza. Got to keep it a little interesting, right? Okay, so what I want to do, and yes, that was a metaphor for making a game and adding a bunch of features before you make the base game. But like that's. Let me ask you a question, Moose. Why do you make games during your free time? Why do you game dev? And I'm guessing it's not because you want to make a ton of money. Well, in a perfect world, I would think that you would game dev because you enjoy doing it, because it's something you have fun doing. And so, if you're doing something for fun, and you keep it serious all the time, and don't do cool things like, hey, imported Trebuchet, you're not going to get anywhere. And it really kind of defeats the purpose of doing this for fun. So, my hunter's going to town. He's now shooting the deer. Who's not running away. Game mechanic I have to fix. But I want to resize my boulder because my boulder is much too large. When I game dev, I lose track of time. Hours become minutes, and I forget to eat. Denalty, I once experienced something very similar to that, but it wasn't building a game, it was playing a game. And that game was called Ark Survival Evolved. I started playing that during school, in college. And I ended up racking up 20,000 hours in that game before I quit. And yeah, playing a video game for 16 hours a day for a while, for a couple of years, it can it can get to you. So now I just game dev instead. It's probably not that much better, but. Alright, what I am trying to do here is I am trying to figure out what the scale of this boulder needs to be to fit into my sling, because it's much too large. You think 0.25? Should we cast lots, draw straws? I wish you could tab between these. That's better. Alright, so there's our boulder. It's 0.25. It looks like it's still extruding a little bit. However, I believe that if we rotate it, this might fix our problem. Okay, apparently you can't rotate. 90 degrees. Okay. Weird. I don't know. I didn't see anything. I think it's because I have this lock in place. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that's why. Anyway. Okay, there's our boulder. That looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. 0.25. Okay. So let's go ahead. So I'm gonna hop in Blender. Here's our boulder. So we need to rotate it to the right, was it? 90 degrees to the right. Yes. So I'll go into modeling. I'll get out of shading. And rotate Y 90. There you go. All right, and we'll do scale 0.25. Hit enter, and I'm going to just recenter the boulder. Oh no, what happened? I didn't have anything else selected either, so let me do that one more time. So reselect those all in object mode, rotate 190, scale 0.25, and we'll rotate Y90. No, gotta go back. All right. Back to the beginning. It should, and I don't know if it was because I had the objects hidden or not. I guess let's check that. Okay, it could have been because they were hidden. All right, so rotate scale 0.25. I'm going to select that and all my objects. Control A, apply all transformations. I'm going to save that. I'm going to export that as an FBX to CryEngine. And let's re-import that boulder. I have to center first. What do you mean? I feel like this is pretty centered. Like that? It's not exactly a proportion boulder. Alright. So adjusted it slightly, reset the origin to be the cursor. If, I don't know if you guys know this, but if you take this boulder and you're like, I don't like where it is, I'm going to throw it over here. You see that orange dot in the center? That's the center of origin. Even though you move the boulder over here, CryEngine will still import it at 0, 0. Because the origin is 0, 0, and CryEngine imports these objects relative to the origin. If I selected these all and I said set origin to 3D cursor, my origin is now here. So the object would now be offset by wherever I threw it. Anyway, let's save that and let's re-export that. Moose says, watching you dev got me in the deving mood, and I opened up my boat game. Immediately noped out of there, way too much math for me. Moose, I gotta ask, what's going on with your boat game? Where's it at? Last time I think you were trying to get the boat to sail around. Actually, I think you got the boat to sail around pretty well. I always one step forward, two steps back. I feel that way sometimes. I really do. I'm just getting lost as to where I am. There we are. Boulder assets, weapons. Siege, Boulder. Boulder. Alright, and there's our boulder. Facing the right direction. Set up the physics properties again. Open up the correct material. Last I left off, I was getting the boat to cruise toward a certain direction, because if you just impulse forward, the boats will always veer in a direction, which isn't ideal. I bet that's because there's some physics interaction with the water. Maybe a silly question, but AI navigation doesn't work in the water, does it? I feel like you'd always have to... Well, actually, this might actually look pretty cool. AI nav meshes. I'm just clearing out my old Boulder file so I can import the new one. Yeah. So I would almost think that all you would have to do is like on update or something, you just have to check what the vector is to your destination and then just impulse towards that destination. I feel like even if there is physics interaction with the water, it should autocorrect itself, would it not? Alright, so I've saved this. Yeah, just brainstorming, man. I don't... Oh no, it didn't actually save. Because the FBX was there. One other gripe I have with the FBX workflow is if you import a mesh and it's successful, it'll save the FBX file. And then if you import it again, it does not... It won't overwrite the FBX file. So you have to go and manually delete the FBX file before you can import it again. And that's mildly annoying. So anyway, we just did that. So we'll save this boulder again. There's our boulder. So now I want to make sure that the positioning of the attachment is good. So I'm going to go back into the character tool, which we already had. One other thing that I can show you guys, I don't know if you guys knew this, but if I have one character tool and another character tool, and I play animation, it plays twice as fast. If I just, you see how fast the animation's playing? Let me close the second window. Okay, we're back to normal. Crazy how that works. You know what's funny about GitHub and the private repo is I think I posted like the first 7 issues in there, and there's been 2 since, and then I felt bad, so I stopped. Yes, you did. Thanks for helping me not feel alone. All right, so I'm going to So I was gonna just check the. I don't need a blend space preview right now. Where's my attachments? Did I just forget how to use the character tool? No. It's not showing up. Alright, there we are. So to test the placement, I'm just going to add the CGF as a geometry attachment here. Weapons, Boulder, Boulder. Alright, so there's our attachment. I'm going to have to rotate this, I believe. Looks like it's going to be a negative 90. Or 0. It's going to be 0, I guess. It's going to be negative 90. And we'll just kind of manually position this to be in a good spot. You were porting the boat game to VR because I was already doing a top-down. I mean, there's a lot of different types of games you can have with a top-down. I don't want to be the reason you didn't do something. I've adjusted the position of the projectile attachment, so I'm going to go back, hop into game, and see what firing this thing looks like now. Okay. That's kind of better. My event systems run into read access violation. I don't know why. Moose, I will not get a big head. I understand there are a lot of different reasons why to do one thing over the other. Heck, even I've been wanting to try out some other types of games, but I also want to finish this, so. VR is pretty fun, and from what I understand, CryEngine does a pretty decent job at it. I kind of feel that way about this RTS. I mean, can you name another RTS in CryEngine? Even if it's like terrible and I sell like 10 copies, it will still be a released RTS in CryEngine. CryEngine, so what was the game? They crowdfunded Wolcen Lords of Mayhem. That was a top-down game. And that game is beautiful. It is gorgeous. A French game studio, I believe, made that. Right, yeah, no city builder. The Trebuchet's got terrible aim. If you recall from one of our last conversations, we didn't want to make it a sniper Trebuchet, so I guess working as intended. I don't think it's the hitbox that needs to be expanded in Ulti. Yeah, splash damage needs to be a thing. Oh. How did that work? Interesting. There might be a bug here. Okay. So that's funny. When the Trebuchet is in focus, when the Trebuchet is in focus, it fires at the top of the arc, right? It's gonna come in like an arrow because it's not rendered. Oh, maybe not. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so I mean, our boulders resized. We're firing projectiles. We can implement splash damage. Maybe not tonight. I think that's going to be a projectile variant. So want to go into a little more detail and set up some more advanced properties for that, but I think that's looking pretty good. I wonder if we should have a min range, like if something is less than 20 meters or within 20 meters distance to the Trebuchet, if we can't hit it. Because the Trebuchet is going to have really long range, and while it will be designed for siege, for breaking down walls, it could be used to attack units, right? But yeah, not allowing it to attack something right in front of you, I think would be... I'm going to write that down, Denalti. Excellent idea. Yeah, ranges as well. That does get a little bit... Well, actually, it might not be as tricky as I think. Have you guys seen our first iteration of combat component? Combat component. Well, I mean, the Trebuchet is a combat component, but from like a unit point of view. I've got waypoints. Let me... I just want to show this off for a second before we... They sniped him again. Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah. Oh, there's that crash again. Do I know why this crash is happening? I do not right now. Did it? That's interesting. That's interesting. I wonder if I can target my own teammate. Well, you can target your own teammate right now. The source is whoever. So whoever's sending the event. Every component in the game is a registered event dispatcher, so it can send off events to any other component that wants to listen to them. It's essentially a. So the only problem is that when I try to send out an event to a listener that's been killed, it doesn't like that. It crashes. So essentially something's been destroyed, something's been killed, and then some other dispatcher is trying to send an event to it, and it doesn't exist anymore. So it doesn't quite work like that. So because the pointer still exists, the pointer is still referencing that memory address. And so it thinks it does exist. I mean, it exactly works like that. But in my case, because the pointer is dereferenced, or sorry, the pointer, the memory's been removed, but the pointer still exists to that address of memory, and we're trying to access it, and that's why it's crashing. I'm still a little bit rusty on my C++ semantics. I spent the first 8 years of my life programming in PHP, which does all the memory management for you. I'll show you in a second. We'll try to get it to crash again. We'll test this theory that if we attack or kill our own unit, it's causing a crash. And to do that, I'm going to create 2 hunting outposts. No, I'm not. Maybe I can. No, okay. I don't think that would cause the crash, because I'll show you guys if I can get it to crash again. Just give me 1 minute here. I'm gonna re-add the Trebuchet in. All right, go peasants, be cannon fodder. That's a bug. All the my select all. My select all apparently selects the animals as well. That's unintended behavior. I do not want to be able to control the deer. All right. Gosh, die plebeian. How hard is it to die? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Your job's to get hit. Please. Okay, there we go. Anyone sitting there questioning the morality of what I just did? Well, that's something we need to talk about, because I am all in favor of having friendly fire. Well, okay, for some stuff, having friendly fire for arrows really sucks. Having friendly fire, well, because you can't really control the trajectory, and with boulders, you can't really control the trajectory either. But it's a pretty big. I would say it would probably have to do splash damage. Like, a projectile wouldn't damage them. We can make the projectile go through them, but when it hits something, it'll do splash damage. So that's something we can look into. So just to show you guys what we were talking about with the memory. So Moose, you said, well, why don't you just check to see if the listener is a null pointer. So I have here a vector of listeners here. I have 4 combat components, and then I have a game event listener. Hey, Soul Vampire, how are you? Welcome to chat. Moose King CPP pro tip: looking at this now makes me think of some of the things you can do to make it more readable for other people. Make globally scoped membered use the M_ prefix. There are quite a few Crytek programming guidelines, or C++ programming guidelines in general, that I've elected to ignore, simply because I'm the only person working on the project. One thing that Rider is really good at doing, JetBrains Rider, the IDE that we're using right now, is it's really good at handling that stuff for you. So you can actually set rules within this IDE and say, hey, I want all my member variables to be M_, all my protected member variables to be M_P, and it will refactor that all for you. So I'm not super concerned about syntax right now. It can be cleaned up if we ever get to a point where more people want to program for this. Is that true? P is for pointer? And see here, I thought it was for a protected variable. All right, so showing you guys this. So we have these 5 listeners here. We have 4 combat components and 1 game event listener. This game event listener doesn't exist. It's been killed. So, target. So we're targeting deer. So timer expired. Yep. Okay. So I don't think I need to handle an entire system to handle the sources of death. All I need to do is properly dereference this listener when it dies. Or, I guess, yeah, I need to properly dereference this listener when it dies. Because what this is doing is this is essentially updating the target. It's checking to see if the target's in combat range, and then it's attacking it. And then when it attacks it, we raise the target event with the active target as the past event parameter. We raise that event, send it to all the listeners, but at this point, the listener's already been destroyed. So, okay, so I understand what the problem is. We're not going to fix it here. Basically, the problem is that I have a combat component, and the combat component is listening to events from all the other combat components around it. Or, sorry, rather, the combat component has listeners to all the other combat components around it. And it's not being dereferenced properly. I mean, in theory... Well, okay, maybe we'll go down this rabbit hole for a minute. Thanks, Moose. In theory, it should trigger here. So I'm going to add some breakpoints there and see what happens. Because when this unit dies, this should get triggered 4 times. Yes, it is. Also, Denalty, I absolutely love your suggestion for making a wizard druid and name him Tristian. Except there's not going to be magic. There just won't be magic. Maybe it'll be like Stronghold Legends, where it'll be a standalone game, and then we'll just put wizards and dragons and shit in there. So I'm going to re-add the Trebuchet. I'm going to re-add my couple of houses. Just give it a second for these peasants to spawn. That's probably enough. I don't think so. So right now, well, let's take a look. All right. My lambs are in the way, ready for slaughter. Okay. So this is the destroy event. Could you, Donalty, could you tell me what a proletariat is? And so yes, they're simply peasants. So we're raising this event here, this destroy event. And this is being kicked off to all the combat components. So this is the unit that got killed. And there's, holy cow, 12 listeners. Right, because all the deer combat's also listening for it. That's quite a few, actually. So the courtyard wants to know about it because the courtyard needs to free up the slot, the idle slot, when it dies. The combat component. Interesting. Well, we damage it and then we destroy it. Interesting. Alright, so we process the game event. So we remove it. Remove it from the peasant, another peasant, Okay. So it's not crashing here. All the peasants... All the combat components are supposed to be deregistering it. Is there... Maybe there's a component that's not listening for it. I'm not sure what that could be right now. I will have to dig into this rabbit hole. But we'll do so a little bit later. I have to say thank you, guys, for just being here. I think I've discovered like 5 bugs just by you guys watching me play my own game. So thank you. I do have a little announcement to make. Moose, we're not going to be done quite yet. We are you know, it's funny because I should have thought about this like a minute ago before it's saying that the code's broken in like 5 different places. We are code complete on what we're looking to do for the technical demo. So obviously not code complete, like all the code is 100% working and bug free, but all of the features that we want to get into that first playable demo are done code wise. And what that means is essentially I think we had an estimate to get the technical demo out by the end of this year. Essentially the next 5 months, well, 4 months, give or take, are going to be spent getting all the art set up, making sure all the audio's in properly. We're going to add a bunch of cues to the workers so that when you tell them to go somewhere, they say stuff. They might idly quip that you're like a terrible leader or something. And then just with that, going through polishing, doing a bunch of game testing. But we're really on track to have, I think we're really on track to have the technical demo done by the end of this year. And I want to stress it is a technical demo. It is, all you are going to be able to do in it is going to be able to farm. And if you've ever played survival games, you're going to love it because all you can do is farm. There'll be, I think what was it, 13 unique worker classes, 18 structures that you can build, and you'll be able to go around, farm a bunch of stuff, and that's going to be the technical build. And then once that's out, we get to talk about what's coming next, which I think is going to be a lot more exciting from a gameplay perspective now that most of the core systems are implemented. So I want to do just a couple more things then tonight. So first I want to get this Trebuchet icon in. And then I want to take a look at the textures for the Trebuchet. I want to make sure that they're properly sped up or set up with the specular workflow, and that I did not accidentally pull in a metallic texture or roughness map instead of a gloss map or something like that. So I'm going to open up this Trebuchet texture in Gimp. I'm a cheapy developer. I don't use Photoshop. It costs $20.99 a month. I can't afford that. Nor do I have to. I actually really like Gimp. Alright, so here's our trebuchet. There's not much I have to do this to import this as an icon. I'm just going to get rid of the background so it looks a little bit nicer against our black selection. Or info box, I should say. That's the thing that displays what you've selected. Ah! Even 2D hand-drawn icons have fake shadow information in them. I'm looking at AO maps. When I was first developing, I thought that I would put AO maps into everything, because it makes things look a little bit more. Just makes things look a little bit more. And then I was watching some of the Crisis Remastered videos where they talked about how they got rid of all the AO maps because they have Svogi. And then I felt a little bit dumb. And so I got rid of my AO maps. Because we use Svogi. Alright, I think that looks pretty good. So I'm gonna, fix this little gap here. Delete, right, there's our background. Looks like I missed just a couple things, which I will, oh my gosh. Oh no. Which I will correct really quick, and then we'll get this exported and then compile this into a DDS. Direct draw surface file. Get that into the correct directory in CryEngine. Verify that it looks good. I do have ADHD, thank you for pointing that out. There are green triangles at the bottom. All right, that should look pretty good. So I'm going to export this as a Trebuchet.tif file. I'm going to check this save thumbnail button. If I do not, the transparency will not be preserved. I don't know why, but that gives me my Trebuchet, and I'm just gonna open this. So there's the finalize. It is very odd, but I'm not gonna question it. So I'm gonna go to my Trebuchet, and instead of the icons woodcutter, it's gonna be icons Trebuchet. And I'm going to build this. We'll import the Trebuchet icon. All of the unit icons are dynamically loaded into the UI at runtime, so we don't need to save it anywhere or precompile it anywhere. One of my goals is to try to make the UI a little bit more modular. Right now it's very static in the way it's set up. I'd love to be able to create it so that you can create like individual buttons from C++ or from a XML file or something. Just to get a little more control over what's being shown when. So I'm going to take that Trebuchet file, I'm going to drag it into this icons directory. It's going to compile our DDS file. So let's load this up again. We'll throw the Trebuchet down again, and then it should have our new Trebuchet file. And the Trebuchet is already aggressively going after those deer. Yeah, so that's the Trebuchet icon then. It's got like an orange tint to it, but that's okay. We can do a quality pass on the icons later. All right, so the other thing I wanted to do tonight, Trebuchets do not have any upkeep like plebeians. You don't have to feed them. Boulders will take stone away from your stockpile. So every boulder you fire will cost you 1 stone, but that's about it. That, like, the amount of stone that it'll cost you may change based on game balance, but that'll be it. You will need to build them, though. You will have to have engineers to be able to use a Trebuchet. And that part of the logic isn't exactly built out yet. But the idea is that if you basically recruit engineers, engineers can build you siege equipment, and they can build it anywhere. And this kind of follows the historical pretext that kingdoms during the medieval times, they didn't build siege engines in their castles and then like take them to where they were going to siege a new castle somewhere like 40 miles away. They would go to the castle and their engineers would build the siege equipment on site. So the plan is to basically have engineers be able to build these, and they'll actually go down and like collect wood from a tree nearby to build the Trebuchet. And then once the Trebuchet is built, it will cost stone to fire. At least that's the plan. So, no feeding the Trebuchet. Sorry, Denalti. I can't give you that. It's just not possible. Can you repair non-human entities? The code is there to support it. And we might build that into the engineer's technical function to where they can like repair a wall or a Trebuchet or a building. But it's not currently implemented. The the technical demo is very much focused on the economy. So, farming resources, resource structures, workers, the transferring of resources, the counting of resources, idle workers, recruitment. So there's a combat component, and we do have a trebuchet in the game, but a bulk of the combat functionality is probably going to be implemented next year. Or, yeah, I guess it'll see how far we get, but that's the plan, at least for now. So I wanted to do one more thing tonight, and that's just take a look at the textures for this trebuchet and make sure that they were correctly set up. I absolutely do love that idea though, Donalty, about repairing non-human entities. I would love it if you have any thoughts like that, throw them in Discord, because I literally write everything that we do in there down. And usually it makes its way into an issue in our tracking system. And of course it gets put on the backlog, but every time we take another chunk out of functionally developing a new feature or something, we try to take a handful of things out of the backlog like that and get them implemented as well. All right, so I'm going to go to my characters, engines, trebuchet, my textures. I want to take a look at. So this is my diffuse file. This is my specular file. I don't think that's right. It's a very light specular file. Let me pull up our material editor. And I'm just gonna dock this to the left. Yeah, so specular. I don't think that's right. I don't think that specular file is right. I'm going to open this source and take a look at it really quick. They call it specular, but I think it's roughness. I mean, it doesn't look bad, but I just wanna make sure that this is actually set up right. Roughness is slightly different. Roughness is actually the inverse of specular. And the reason why I think this is wrong is because all of... Yeah, see all my... So I'm going to do a color, I'm going to do an invert. Well, that didn't do anything. It's because I have nothing selected. colors, invert. What's going on? This is my metal. Yeah, 100% this isn't right because this metal should be black. In the Albedo, in the Specular workflow, your metal should be black. For some reason, I had opened the rock Specular. Why? Metal Specular. Okay, so let me grab this then. The reason why you can't see anything is because there's an alpha layer. And so it's just throwing that right on top of the actual colors. So deselect those, select the alpha, and select all, and try to invert this, but that's not working. So we'll take that layer, we'll make it a new layer. You see it? You see it now? I'm just pasting a bunch of extra stuff on there, but so there's our new layer. I'm going to delete this layer. I'm going to I don't want my alpha channel. Okay, so here's my layer. So confused why my commands aren't working. This might actually... Trying to think. This might actually work for a specular. This might actually be a specular. Maybe it's just that they paste into the other channel. Rev should be here, but he's not. That makes me sad. So I'm going to undo everything I just did. I'm going to select all, I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go to here. I'm going to add a layer mask. It's going to be, I'm going to add a new layer. It's going to be black. So my background color, I'm going to add a layer mask. I'm going to paste. Okay, so that makes more sense. So here's the base diffuse. And here's, I still don't think this is right. It should be more black. Essentially, if it's pure metal, it should be pure black. So it is darker, so that's good, but it should be much darker. And if I invert this, it just makes it lighter. I'm going to keep it darker. There's a tutorial on how to do this. Just trying to pull up the site. There we go. All right, so traditional content, diffuse, specular, normal map, great. Traditional to PBR. That's fine. I'm looking at a metalness to specular, I believe. Right. So specular should be a grayscale map. And do you see these metal here? So on this texture, there's there's pieces of metal here. As you can see, like over here, this is metal, and this is metal, and this is metal. In the converted albedo map, they're completely black. Yes. So, taking a look at this is all metal. Tell me what's wrong. It's not all black. I could do that, but now I need to get a specular map. Okay. Fair enough, Moose. Okay, so I can manually adjust this, right? Let me get back to the base. Okay. So that's not at all going to be perfect. But we're going to go with it. So that's going to be our albedo. And then I'm going to go into this layer mask. I need to fill the layer mask with need to fill it with the gray, the 383838, and then I have to invert the metalness. Which honestly, it looks inverted already. No, it doesn't, because it should be black. It should be black for metal. So I'm just gonna color invert. And this is gonna be, in theory, our specular. And the reason why it's colored is because this is where color comes in through a specular workflow metal. It comes in through the specular map, not the diffuse. So I don't exactly know how this is gonna look or go. I may need to go back and tweak these textures a little bit after the fact, but we're gonna try, and if it works, great. If not, great. We'll just have to do something different. So we have our metal specular and we have our metal albedo. So I'm going to copy those two files. I'll go to objects, characters, engines, Trebuchet. And there's our textures folder. I was expecting that to happen. So I need to delete the textures first. For some reason, my local CryEngine instance has a read issue with textures that already exist. If I try to import over the top of them, it fails. So we'll get rid of the Albedo. I don't use the diff anymore, and then the Specular, we'll get rid of that as well. Trebuchet, metal spec. Alright, then we just have our normal map. So let's launch this engine back up and import these textures again. We'll drag in the Trebuchet once more. And let's pull up our material. I'm on the metal. I'm going to go to my engines, Trebuchet textures. And I'm going to drag my Albedo and my Specular. I think I'm going to drag my Albedo and my Specular. We're just going to crash today, I guess. I have a way around this. I'll open the README to my project because this is where the fix is at. I'm going to compile all the TIFF images into the resource cache. It's kind of an annoying workaround, but this will work for now. Alright, so if I go up one directory, here are all my projects. I'm going to paste and the problem is that this is not a Windows terminal. So I'm going to open up command prompt. I'm going to paste this here. That went pretty quick. Let me just make sure that the RC compiler actually found something. Can't find any files matching assets. That's correct. There we go. All right, so this is just compiling all of our textures into the resource cache for the Sandbox editor. In case you did not know, the Sandbox editor has its own compiled textures, different from your project. If you're ever wondering how your CryEngine operates on direct draw service files, DDS files, if you're ever wondering why all these textures are able to render in the engine, but you don't see any DDS files in your project, it's because they get put into the resource cache in the Sandbox. And when you right click and package up your game, it actually pulls those files from that cache. So let's get our materials, characters, engines, trebuchet, textures are not showing up. So we'll go to the root and then we'll just do trebuchet A. Okay, here's our metal. Here's our spec. Alright, so I'll go to my metal. Let's open up the sandbox again. Moose, I do like your idea of just using the artistic license and doing whatever I want. I do want to try to keep some form of consistency though. So if I know it's being done the correct way, then we can just do that everywhere and then it should work. Alright, so here's metal. I'm going to change the diffuse color back to what it was. I'm going to draw in my specular map. Okay, I'm going to take in my Albedo. Look at that. Working as intended. Alright, we'll see you, Denalty. Thanks for stopping by. It was good to have you. I don't think I have a gloss map though. I guess let me take a look. That didn't work. So it's just a DDN right now. Yeah, I don't have a gloss map in here. We'll play around with that later. There's ways to increase the, not the effectiveness, but the appearance of a, what am I trying to say? The appearance of a normal map to make it more rough. So I mean, the only problem here is that there's no color. There's no color coming out of the metal. And if I have like iron and I change this to a product, this is iron, right? And this is, I believe, more properly set up metal. This is just black. I guess let me take a look at the iron iron bar properties. Specular color. Oh, that's right. Okay. I'm going to go back to the Trebuchet. I believe this... Or not. Or not. That's the wood. That's the wood. For like diffuse and specular. Yeah, and I think this should have done it. Let me just bring in my Trebuchet again. Yeah, that's a lot better. It just wasn't loading. Man, I really wish I had a before and after. You sure I should set the gloss to full? Oh, right, but I don't have a gloss map for this one, so. Yeah. I think that's looking a lot more metal-y, though. What do you think, Moose? An improvement? Trying to see if I can go back to a previous snapshot of what it looked like. Yeah, here we go. Let's just pull that back. All right, 1 second. I'm gonna take a screenshot and so this is what it was before, and this is what it is now. It's yeah. I think that's better, even if it's not perfect. It's much more metal-y. All right. Like this. I think it looks exactly how it did before. Except now it's properly using the specular workflow. So, I mean, that's a win, right? That's a win. All right. Yeah. It's got that nice bounce now too. Like you can see the light bouncing off of it. So cool. Well, that's what I was aiming for, getting corrected. So thank you for bearing with me while we got that sorted out. And that is all I had planned for tonight. I think this puts us in a really good spot with the Trebuchet as a playable component. Like I kind of talked with you guys earlier on the stream, there are more steps that we could take to kind of start establishing this as an actual gameplay mechanic. So like getting the engineers to spawn, and then getting the engineers to build a trebuchet and everything else. But I think we're gonna save that for a little bit later and save the next stream for some other fun stuff. I know I had mentioned in one of the chats in the CryEngine Discord potentially pulling up the user interface, and instead of spawning, I guess let me show you. So we have an interface component right now that basically just takes enumerated types. So when the interface sends oil well string, for example, we put the oil well into the build queue. And what we can do instead is, instead of passing a string, which we then need to map to a enumerated type and then pass it to a factory to actually create the component, we can just pass the GUID as a string from the UI. So instead of it being like house, it would be something like this. And then the build queue would literally just be that string. And then when we process this, when we begin building, instead of taking this type and passing it through to a factory, all we would do is this entity we just create the component by interface ID. And that cry interface ID is just an alias for the user GUID. So anyway, yeah, so we can take a look at that later. Just want to say thank you for everybody who tuned in and listened to our dev stream tonight. Hopefully you guys learned a thing or two, had some fun doing it. Thank you so much for coming out. I really enjoy hanging out with you guys, and I hope you guys enjoy the streams, enjoy just seeing where stuff's at. So I will see you guys again in 2 weeks. I'd like to again just take these last moments here to thank Moose King and Anara for your Patreon support. It means a lot. See you in the next one.